I'm Kate Hardin. I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Integrated Studies in Education at McGill University. My supervisors are Jane Malenfant and Susan Ballinger. My research is supported by SSHRC and FRQSC, and it focuses on the teaching of French to adult newcomers in Quebec. My research is rooted in my background as an adult educator and my own experiences as a language learner. I grew up in the US in English, and when I went to grad school, I went to die Freie Universität Berlin in Germany and Kazan Federal University in Russia. I studied European languages and linguistics, so I learned German, Russian, Spanish, and a bit of Tatar, which is an indigenous language of Russia. And then when I started my PhD, I moved to Quebec and started learning French. I'm trained as an adult ESL instructor, so after I finished my master's, I went back to the States and started teaching in a refugee resettlement center in Kentucky. One big realization that I had in that job was that the way that I had been taught to teach and to think about education didn't really apply in the center where I was teaching. As a language teacher, you expect to deal with cultural difference. You expect to have language barriers, and so I had a lot of strategies for bridging those. What I didn't realize until I started at the resettlement center was that all of those strategies were based on the assumption that my students and I would share a culture of formal schooling that was the same across different linguistic and cultural communities. And in the Refugee Resettlement Center, I was working with some students who had not been to school before or who had only done a few years of school, and we didn't share that cultural knowledge. So that really required me to rebuild a big part of my teaching practice. And I had to figure out how to teach without relying on that assumed shared cultural vocabulary, if you will, of formal schooling. And it wasn't exactly an easy time to be doing that work. I started at that position in 2017, so it was a time when the US administration was trying a lot of different strategies to undermine and restrict services for immigrants, and especially for refugees and asylum seekers. And so it felt like every day some big new policy would drop that we didn't really understand the impact of. We didn't know the implications a week from now, a month from now. There were even differences from learner to learner that we had to figure out how to navigate. And I remember thinking, I have such incredible colleagues, we have such amazing students, and we're doing really cool work together, but man, we could do so much more if we could just see more than 6 inches in front of our face. So it's really that experience that brought me to my research. I wanted to be a better educator. I wanted to work with other people who wanted to be better educators and support them as we tried to figure out how our work comes to be shaped the way it is, and how understanding that might allow us to claim more agency to create the kinds of teaching and learning experiences that we want to be offering our students. So my research focuses on the program known as Francisation, which is a set of programs offered by the Quebec government to teach French to newcomers. And there's a subset within that program that focuses specifically on newcomers who are learning print literacy for the first time or who have had less access to formal schooling. So in Quebec and worldwide, those learners and their needs tend to not be very well known. The programs tend not to be as well developed as programs for more educated learners. And so my objective is to, first of all, document what's going on in that program or sub-program, to look at how the structure of the program is impacting the experiences of teachers, and to try to develop some tools so that teachers like me, teachers like my participants, will be more prepared to claim more agency within their programs to create the educational experiences that their students need. So to do that, I'm using a research approach called institutional ethnography, which is really well conceived for exploring those connections between an individual's experience and higher level macro social and political factors. So basically what I'm doing is analyzing historical and contemporary policy documents and curricular materials to get an image of how Francisation is supposed to work, how we think it works. And then I'm speaking to professionals in the field, to teachers, to social workers, to administrators, to see how it actually works and where maybe what's happening on the ground is actually really different from what we think is supposed to be happening. So one of the things I'm finding is that overall, francisation is structured with certain assumptions in mind about how people learn a language and how effective language instruction should be arranged, and that those assumptions are based on that shared culture of formal schooling that not all learners actually share. So what I'm working on right now is documenting some of the ways that the program is structured in ways that don't make sense for my learners, and also documenting what teachers are doing about that. It's a really interesting time to be doing this work because around the time that I started data collection, there were a lot of really big changes in francisation, a lot of restructuring that actually led to some instability and unpredictability that was very similar to what I experienced a few years ago in Kentucky. So in some ways, it felt like it came full circle. Through this project, I've been able to connect with some really incredible, passionate educators and researchers. And so I'm really hoping that my work can build on what they've already done. I'm hoping to be able to amplify the creativity of these educators and to help some of their ideas reach a wider audience so that teachers can be learning from each other. I also hope that I'll be able to provide some ideas for educators like me, like my participants, for how they can better navigate sometimes really difficult social, political, and institutional barriers to doing our work well. If you're interested in learning more about my work, you can look me up on Google Scholar. Thanks so much for watching.